game. Time to play the game!
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Toe Knows Everything podcast. Today is a special UFC MMA edition. I am super thrilled and proud to have on the show UFC fighter Mr. Elias Theodorou and his doctor, Dr. DARIO, chiropractor, and a special guest, the real Marco G, martial artist, all-around sportsman, and commentator. So guys, thank you for being on the show. I really appreciate it. We're excited to have you here. And as a Canadian, Elias, we're super pumped because you got a big fight coming up in Ottawa on May 4th. You're representing Canada. You're representing the Greek community. We're going to talk a little bit about your background, how you got into mixed martial arts, and how you're doing in the UFC. And then we'll talk a little bit about training and how Dr. DARIO is helping you along. So, your background. You come from Mississauga, Ontario. You've got a Greek background. You got amazing hair. You got the Greek god look, obviously. I guess that doesn't hurt with the ladies. It never hurts. Good hair never hurts. Men or women.
Less is more, think how much more is.
Absolutely. So you come from Mississauga, Ontario. You grew up here in the GTA. You end up at Humber College. And at Humber College, you basically join an MMA class to sort of fill in time. Is that correct?
Well, beyond that, I was enlightening the mind in university, as you mentioned, in regards to my degree at Humber College, where I have a BA in advertising.
Amazing.
And during the same time that I was enlightening my mind, I thought the body should follow. And I went to a gym that a friend of mine, Ryan Jameson, already trained at. He was my brother's friend growing up in high school, and I knew that he's been in martial arts for a long time, and I knew that he was already great at it, and I had the opportunity to join there for quite some time. And again, soon after the years of enlightening my mind, I realized I wanted to do the body, and they found they were intertwined. At the same time, I went to school for an advertising degree in marketing, and I was
Which doesn't hurt you as a UFC fighter.
No,
you got to brand yourself. You got to put yourself out there. So obviously, those skills and what you learned in school comes into reality and into play in terms of marketing yourself.
Yeah, well, again, because I'm more proactive, I guess, than usual, and I've kind of been able, in a successful way, and obviously growing further and further as regards to both brand and my ability as a fighter, and also in my fighting career in general. Now coming up with my next fight, May 4th, and May 4th will be with
in
you
Ottawa,
as well.
check it out. Let's do it.
But more importantly, being able to fight, harder, better and better talent all the way through. I've been able to grow not only as a student at first in my schooling, but a student in martial arts, and I've been able to kind of keep that approach and always learning and growing and moving forward.
So you never participated in martial arts as a young kid? I mean, like as a teenager, until you got to college?
I didn't start until about 20, 21.
Wow, so that I would say that's pretty late in anyone's career, because you're a pro and you didn't become an actual practitioner of the sport until you're 20 years old. That's late for most people to pick it up.
Definitely, but I think there's been different articles and studies about the ability for people. Again, there's certain specific sports, like for instance, gymnastics. Most people would start at a certain age, and then they would go into there. True, but that's usually why they would also finish a career a lot sooner than most. So you guys, the whole game plan would be to get to the Olympics, and what that could essentially be as what's it called, career, stepping stone, etc., etc.
You want to go long term.
Point being, I in a previous life was a skateboarder. That what explains the hair. But I used to jump off insanely high sets of stairs and hand railings before I realized I was terrified.
So you were a thrill seeker?
In some capacity. Again, I was a little bit of, I like doing something, I guess, in a different direction, and what better way than jumping off a set of stairs rather than walking them.
Absolutely.
And then that translated, I think, in mixed martial arts, and my ability to have an unorthodox style and be able to be as agile and to have such a, a different style and an ability to use my agility in a way that leaves me elusive in a different way that I've made my own. And again, going back to the fact that I didn't start martial arts until about 20 or so, and with no background in past that, now being able to say that I've been in the UFC for 5 of those 10 years, that I've since started martial arts.
That's pretty remarkable. It's an incredible accomplishment. So obviously the UFC has changed over the years since its inception.
Yes.
It started with guys like Tank Abbott,
Yeah.
who really didn't focus on diet, never focused on physicality. There was no real pressure put on them to be real athletes. Whereas you, obviously, like you said, you're focusing on agility training. And I know that you're training now. The rumor is with George St. Pierre, one of the greatest of all time. Are you at TriStar Gym in Montreal?
Well, yes, so it wouldn't necessarily be a rumor, it'd be the truth.
All right, good,
So,
awesome.
I've been
So you're training with the best of the best.
Well, yeah, and well, obviously he's now retired, so
Right.
competition days are at the moment behind him. But he still, he still teaches a couple of classes, kind of giving back.
Sure,
At TriStar?
At TriStar, and
Wow.
what's it called, giving back to
Wow.
those that have also trained beside him.
A
'cause
legend,
again, he's
living
been around,
legend.
TriStar for quite some time, or his whole career, in fact.
Nice.
But also giving back to us as athletes, and it's who better to have you training wrestling than the best MMA
Yeah.
wrestler
Wow, for sure.
to ever do it,
Sure.
right? So,
So you're training both with George and Zahibi, his coach?
yeah,
At
Faraz
TriStar?
Zahabi.
Okay, so
Wow.
I saw him on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he was talking about smart training. What is the smart training philosophy? Like he says, for his athletes, he wants them in the gym 3 times a week, 5-hour sessions. That's his philosophy. Is that the way to train? Is that the way to prepare for a big fight? Like you got this UFC fight coming up on May 4th. Everyone make sure you watch by the pay-per-view or come with us to Ottawa to watch.
Yeah, we're planning it for
Is that
sure.
the smart way to train?
Well, first and foremost, it'll actually be on TSN here in Toronto, or here in
Really?
Canada, so you'll be able to watch it for free.
Amazing.
Um,
Well said.
What's it called? Even better. So, point being, there's many different directions. Obviously, every fighter is different, so you have to take a different approach. Faraz has been great as, again, in many ways, a mastermind in the capacity of how to put it all together. I have other coaches, other people on my team. Like
Dr.
Dr.
Dario.
that have helped me in different directions in regards to, again, as an athlete, I need different directions to, beyond the fact that obviously mixed martial arts in many ways is an individual sport, it takes a team to kind of build it all together. So whether it's having someone like Faraz, putting together my game plan, or helping towards putting everything from all the coaches, or Dr. Dario putting my body back together, it's important to be as 100% as you can on game day, and that's whether inside the cage or out.
So, Dr. Dario, how do you focus on elite athletes like Elias? What do you do to put his body back together after a fight? Because obviously the amount of stress placed on the body after a UFC fight is tremendous. How do you repair someone like him?
So you pretty much have to perform like a functional exam, so you see what is limited in the athlete. So the range of motion, you check the muscles that are tight and so forth, and then you address those issues that are associated with that. They're not big issues, but it's more like, so my focus is to optimize performance and recovery.
Right.
So I will assess him, see which areas of his body require more hands-on or more acupuncture or adjustments, whatever it may be.
Right.
So it can change from week to week. And
So it's very important, obviously, to do a diagnostic and see what it
Absolutely.
is that he really needs.
Absolutely.
Because everyone's individually based, and you know what, you need to find out exactly what it is that Elias needs.
Right. So then for him, I'll also listen to him, and he'll be like, hey, I'm super tight here. Can you address that?
Right.
So it's not just what I find. I will also have that open communication with the athlete and listen to him and be like, okay, so you want work on your shoulders? No problem. We'll target that too.
Amazing.
Because, again, as athletes, a lot of it is about being as close to, if not 100%, as possible. And, there's a lot of wear and tear, and he'll be the first to tell you along the way, because, again, my sport is not necessarily one sport, it's the additional of all these other sports, right? So going back to the aspect of Tank Abbott or whatever, I'd say the big transition where they were fighters and now it's a sport and we're athletes. So again, there's still different fighters that, blend the two together, and some are a little bit more than the other.
And you train many different martial arts too, as well. It's not just one martial art.
Well, you
People
have
think it's
to,
a
right?
joke.
Well, that's
Right?
every
Different guys with the capacity.
You do
right?
jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, boxing, the list goes on. A lot of people don't understand that you're more than just one martial artist.
How
You
big of
study a lot.
a part does nutrition play in your training? Would you say nutrition and working out is a 70-30 split, or is it 50-50?
I don't know necessarily. Again, the old adage would be 80-20,
Right.
is where diet's the most important thing. But obviously, beyond that, it's just keeping them both in tune. It's the aspect of discipline. It's getting not only the right things into my body. It's also getting the right things done to my body to having me back the next day and each and every day, again, as close to 100% as possible on game night. Because, again, that obviously with a sport as glaring as mine, this is something that all athletes deal with, but in the case of injury. But obviously mine is a much more aggressive sport than the usual one.
Of course. Sure. On that topic, sorry, Tony, I noticed on your Instagram you have a meal plan set up.
Yeah.
It looks delicious as hell, I gotta say. What
do you eat?
Yeah, what is it? What's this meal plan?
The
Tell
meal
us
plan that
about
you're
that.
talking about specifically is On the Run Meals.
On the Run Meals.
And again, it's a meal prep service. It takes out all the thinking in regards to just setting up the rest of your week, right?
Hey, it looks delicious,
for instance, today we were taping on a Sunday, and when I get home, my meals will pretty much be ready for me, and that's just the whole capacity of preparation and thought that I take out of it, and I can focus on recovery. Whether it's getting an extra session in physio, or it's taking, again, and as an athlete, naps are huge in my life, and naps save lives, just in general. So
solid recovery for sure. Yeah. So how much do you sleep? Do you sleep quite a bit? Because obviously the body repairs as you sleep. Maybe Dr. Dario can speak to that. How much sleep do we really need? Is it 8 hours, 7 hours? Does an elite athlete need more?
It all depends on the athlete. Everybody's different. Like, there's no particular answer. Some research will say 7, a minimum of 7. Some of them will say 8. But it all depends what the athlete feels is right. And sometimes they'll have sleepless nights because they have to train. They have to wake up early and then train again.
Absolutely.
So you may have those components that play into that, right?
Right. Do you feel anxiety like everyone else? Before any big event, people feel anxiety. You're getting married the next day, you can't sleep, you're restless. You got a big fight, do you worry at night, or are you relaxed and you able to sleep?
I definitely obviously have the nerves in some capacity, but I've lost 2 times in my career out of the 20 fights that I essentially have,
which is an amazing record.
Still amazing record.
And then even those were decisions, so it just means it's up to interpretation on what the judges said.
Yeah, that's true.
But where I'm going with this is the fact that the sun will rise the next day, and I'm feeling more and more confident in my ability as an athlete, and my ability to slowly, because I think what I'm able to do in training is already at the point of the idea of top competition, and it's just my ability to be the same guy I am every single day in the gym on game day, and that's what I think I'm coming close to. Again, some of it would be the deficit of the fact that I never had any martial arts in any past, so my experience level in actually putting it all together is something I've been learning on the fly for the past 5 or 6 years.
You've been
that
doing
I've
really
professional.
well.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing.
You've been doing pretty good.
A lot of people train the wrong way, and they might be training the wrong way for 10 years.
Yeah.
So you never had that negative exposure. You're having elite exposure training with George St. Pierre and the likes, so that could be an actual benefit to you.
For sure, and also the fact that I'm a blank canvas.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily the wrong way, but very one-dimensional is how some people could be training. Let's say if someone, has been a wrestler all their life, it's amazing that there are these great wrestlers, but what's it called? The rules between jiu-jitsu and wrestling are very different,
Yeah,
and
it's
the
true.
same thing with MMA, right? So there's certain types of positions that you might have to mentally get over with, where it's not an issue for me.
Right.
And I've been able to blend, I think, my unorthodox style because of my prior life as a skateboarder, and that ability to add a certain type of agility and a certain type of dexterity that I've been able to accomplish what I've been able to do. For instance, of my 10 fights that I've had in the UFC, I've never been outstruck, and all but 2, I've actually doubled the output that my opponents have.
Yeah,
So, I am May 4th taking on a very tough individual.
So he's
Derek
a wrestler,
Brunson.
right, Brunson? Yeah.
Yep, he's a wrestler, but he's very much a knockout artist. He's going to try and knock out my block, and I'm going to show him the difference between chess and checkers, like I always do.
That's it.
And
That's the way.
basically, with him specifically and in just general, I'm feeling more and more confident in my ability, and more and more excited to show everyone what I've worked so hard on.
Awesome. So you're talking about mind-body connection and how you brought those two together, you fused them. I don't know, maybe it's your Greek background philosophy, but how does mindset and how big of a part does mindset play in terms of you winning these fights? Is that a big component of winning? Like, I know the training is obviously very important, the nutrition is important, getting adjusted is important, but how big of a component is mindset?
Well, it's all of the above. So I guess the thing that I like to always say is the best person doesn't always win. It's the best person on game day.
That's right.
So especially when you're talking about competition and unlike baseball, you can have 160 plus games in a season, right? Depending on how far you go. And with myself, I have about 2 to 3 opportunities in my fights, and it's all about that specific day. I think there are many times where I could have zigged when I should have zagged, or even better, in my case, in regards to my career, zigging and zagging worked in the direction, because obviously, going undefeated for 12 professional fights, and the first person that I've ever lost again is against a Savage in the capacity of Thiago Santos, who's fighting, now a weight class higher and for the belt. So those things and that experience have allowed me to realize, the only person I've actually lost is now fighting John Jones, and I'm the only person that he hasn't essentially knocked dead in a fight.
That says a lot, man.
Part of it also was talking about the hair again, the capacity that fight, my hair was in a transition, and I kind of put only 3 braids up and a little ponytail at the back, and it kind of got in my face, and it was just not making excuses, but those are things that, again, I have to learn from.
So
and
ritual,
ritual, etc., etc. But it's also putting everything in perspective and taking that perspective each and every single time. Now heading towards my 20th fight as a professional athlete.
Speaking about hair, coming up on the 4th, you plan to do the old school Steven Seagal?
Oh,
just straight ponytail, slick it back, above the law, break some necks. Can we expect that? Come on.
But
what do you mean? Thank you.
Just get it tight. If it ain't tight, it ain't right.
That's it.
So
that's the way.
That's it, man.
Tell me a little bit about the Ultimate Fighter, because you won the Ultimate Fighter Canada versus Australia. What was that experience like?
Well, obviously I won, so it was a great experience.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Go Canada.
That's it, bro. You give a beating, everybody. You give a beating on that show.
It's essentially, for those that don't know, it's Big Brother with punching and kicking, where the whole idea is in a tournament style, you fight your way to a contract with the UFC. And I entered that as, I think I was 9-0 at the time, and was lucky enough to get on the show, and then from there, win it. Part of that was Canada versus Australia, so it was kind of a nation's theme to it. And Canada, it was great to represent Canada, and obviously, as you mentioned, still do now. Being also the first Canadian to win the Ultimate Fighter was a great experience. And then obviously,
you made history.
You were the first again, going back to different things that kind of reflected my career and stuff. For instance, I have a quick tattoo. I don't know if you can see it, but it's basically a throwback at Greek heritage. Basically, this alpha greater than 10 omegas. As when I won the Ultimate Fighter, I was able to go 10-0. 10 is a very powerful number in the
10
decimal
is my favorite
system.
number, man.
It's the basis of the decimal system.
Number 10.
It's a powerful
It's the
number.
Greek superstition, the evil eyes.
That's it,
But point being, it's taking all of this and as an athlete and growing and having fun with it too.
That's amazing. So let me ask you this question. What's it like to deal with the business aspect of the UFC? You deal with a character like Dana White. You deal with all those big personalities. Is it difficult for an individual athlete to navigate that?
Well, I'm lucky I have a great management who I'm able to not only communicate on my own with the UFC, but also with them. And I actually just recently re-signed a new contract with the UFC, and I couldn't be happier.
Fantastic, congratulations.
Heading into this next fight, it's just more momentum in regards to just feeling confident with where I am. Obviously, there's differences in regards to my sport than others in the capacity of we don't have a union per se. Right. We don't collective bargaining, but at the same time, what's it called?
So basically, it's all on your shoulders. It's how you perform.
Well, again, I have a team, whether it's in the gym or not. I mentioned my management, and I'm also.
But ultimately, it's on you.
Yes,
you can have all that support and training, but ultimately, if you don't perform on game day,
yes, right? There is an onus on me to perform on game day, and I'm 8-2 in the UFC, and looking to make that 9-2.
Nice.
And just kind of keep on going. The proof is in the pudding, right? Like there is some capacity of, again, a company that large, as with many, it might be kind of what have you done for me lately? And lately I've gone 8-0 on a 3-fight win streak, and I'm looking to make it 4 in our nation's capital.
Can't wait.
And not only currently being the highest ranked Canadian fighter in the UFC, but taking that into the top 10 against Derek Brunson, who's number 8th, and then a bench higher.
So where do you see Canadians in the UFC in the next couple of years? Do you see more and more Canadian kids coming up the ranks? Do you see them joining the ranks of the UFC? Is the sport growing in Canada?
Again, obviously, as with anything, things have ebbs and flows. And someone like George St. Pierre, who is the greatest fighter of all time, I might be a little biased, but he definitely is.
I would have loved to see him fight McGregor. I know the weight class thing, but it would have been the super fight of the world.
Especially at the height that it was, you know what I mean? Yeah. So I totally understand that capacity. But at the same time, George was able to do it on his own terms and, become a champ himself. Yeah. And from there, being a great steward of martial arts and, brought not only future martial artists into mixed martial arts, but previous ones and current ones like myself into it as well. Yeah. So it's been amazing to be around him. It was amazing. We actually watched when I was in the Ultimate Fighter his previous last fight against Johnny Hendricks, and him winning and retiring, and how basically inspiring that was, and then to have him surprisingly show up at the house a couple days later.
Awesome.
It was very inspiring to our whole team and myself, and I definitely do see other people my own age or parents in general who have their children and not only necessarily jump into soccer but jump into martial arts and or
builds discipline. There's a lot of great characteristics that come with martial artists, right? And you know what? It takes someone who's strong, not only strong mentally but physically. So you're a well-rounded person if you're a martial artist. That's what I do.
I definitely agree, especially in order to stick with it. It's the discipline to have that. The discipline within the sport to learn and grow and want to do that and have those pathways open up in your head and understand that whole world. But even in the capacity of just bettering yourself as a person, and especially as a child, that's a very empowering thing, both mentally and physically.
Who's your favorite fighter to watch in the UFC right now, other than yourself, obviously?
Well, I definitely wouldn't say I love watching myself.
You must watch the fights the next day.
I watch my own fights, for sure.
I
know for sure.
Absolutely.
What I did, what I could have done. Obviously,
the best fighters do that, yeah.
But if you had to pay a ticket and watch somebody, who's your favorite fighter?
Well, I luckily get free tickets from the UFC. Shout out to them. But
you can send some to sports.
Point being, I did just fly out to Vegas to watch John Jones fight against Anthony Smith, and there were great fights before there. Again, I love what Ben Askren is doing as an undefeated fighter, and him as a person in general. He's funky, obviously, and I came into it late as a martial artist, but I was always a fan first. So being able to watch some of these fighters, and now eventually being a UFC fighter myself, I still pinch myself every day.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, it's a dream come true. You can imagine.
Absolutely. Every kid's dream to be in the ring. And I think, moving forward, a lot of Canadian kids are going to see you, and you're going to be a role model for these Canadian kids. And they're going to say, if Elias can do it, we can do it too. Do you feel the pressure of that?
No, I just kind of look at it as me being myself. I feel that the onus is on me to be the best me as possible in regards to that.
Looking at it.
But besides that, I think, it blows my mind that anyone appreciates what I do, but I appreciate it either way. And, as a fan of mixed martial arts, I would just also try to be as one-to-one on whether someone's a fan of myself, the connecting component is we're both fan of martial arts in the UFC.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Dario, quick question. Would you say fighters are the hardest people to work on because of the abuse the body takes? I know football players take abuse, basketball players take abuse, but would you say UFC fighters are probably the toughest guys to work on?
I would say so. They have a lot of component, but it depends on the athlete, how much they've, quote unquote, abused their body. They've got a lot of tension. They've been training a lot, because hockey players are very similar, because I deal with hockey players as well,
Right.
and they're very similar to MMA fighters.
Can you actually overtrain? Is that just a myth, the overtraining
no, you
myth?
can overtrain, absolutely.
So the rest and recovery is super important,
Very important.
regardless of the sport.
You want to be the best athlete, you want to perform your best, you're going to need to rest accordingly.
And part of that is also, and he can attest to it, is it's preventative care. It's almost too late if the injury's already happened. Again, bumps and bruises happen, whether it's on a personal level in regards to like different injuries that I've had along the way that Dr. Dario has been able to, recover on the spot throughout, and it's the capacity of, obviously an injury is prone to be re-aggravated if you don't have the luxury of time to necessarily rest it
Take
off.
the proper precautions,
kind of
proper
go
way
with
of
the flow.
healing it. You're right.
Absolutely.
And he's responsible that way in the sense that he will, as soon as something happens, I get a phone call or a text message, I need to come and see you. And that is, I really love that about him. It's proactive, especially if you're an athlete. You got to take care of your body ASAP, as soon as possible, so you can recover faster from your injury or whatever it is that you're experiencing.
And I think athletes are a lot more knowledgeable and aware of their own bodies today. 20, 25 years ago, I don't think athletes had that self-awareness, whereas today they're very knowledgeable on their bodies and what their bodies need and what they need to do to recover, and they work with professionals like yourself to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Let's switch gears a little bit. I know that obviously you got a degree in marketing, so you're constantly branding and marketing yourself. You're involved in cannabis, and as you know, in Canada it's now legal. What are you doing with the cannabis industry here in Canada?
Well, I'm in the process of applying for what's called a therapeutic use exemption. It basically, more specifically, cannabis finds itself on the prohibited list, and medical cannabis
Is for testing? Will they test the fighters?
Yes, so the UFC has partnered with a third-party tester called USADA, which is the parent company of WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, and USADA is the United States Anti-Doping Agency. So cannabis, medical cannabis, finds itself on the prohibited list, and that's the way that I medicate with my bilateral neuropathic pain, in regards to my essentially nerve damage of my upper extremities. And it is one of the best ways, it is the best way in regards to pain management more specifically, and it's also one of the best ways that I'm able to treat my symptoms, my illness, and everything in between. And I am in many ways at a competitive disadvantage because of my condition, and this is the best way that I and my medical doctor have decided. And
So you're fighting for an exemption.
Yes, and he has prescribed for me. And going on to the kind of Canadian aspect for it, beyond it becoming legal, it's been medically recognized in Canada since 2003 in Ontario. So it is a fundamental right to have healthcare in Canada. So I'm not only fighting for my right to get a therapeutic use exemption to use my medicine, but actually to exercise my fundamental right as a Canadian to medicate as I should choose by my medical doctor.
Part of the Charter of Rights and Freedom.
It's called civil liberties and your choice. A couple of weeks ago, we had Ben Johnson, the former Olympic athlete, on the show, and Ben was talking about how the Olympic Committee back in 1988. What year were you born?
1988.
Okay, there you go.
That's
Ben
it,
Johnson
Year of
was
the dragon.
stripped. You got it. He was stripped of his gold medal in Seoul, South Korea, because he tested positive for anabolic steroids. He says he was set up. He says the doping committee basically set him up, and he tested positive. They took away his Olympic medal. But he says that this medical marijuana thing, he doesn't support it because he doesn't believe in it. So his opinion is that he thinks people are sort of taking advantage because now it is legal to use cannabis in Canada. What do you think about his opinion of that?
Well, I think it's just that, an opinion, and I'll take the professional prescription from my doctor. And as it being attached to medical, what's called one's medical right, he's not looking at it, and he might be kind of inflating the difference between recreational and medical. And what I'm trying to promote in my specific case is my medical right as a Canadian to medicate as prescribed. Again, the hypocrisy and the capacity of the fact that I'm being told to, instead of taking medical cannabis, to take something like Vicodin, or take an opioid, or take an SSRI or antidepressants.
I would stay away from all the pharmaceutical stuff. It's the worst.
Nothing more than a show that for itself to be an outdated process that pushes us to
tons of
opioids,
side effects.
pushes us to
Addiction.
opioids rather than a natural way. Again, I'm not telling anyone that they shouldn't necessarily take opioids because that might work best for them.
Yeah, it's true.
What I'm asking for is medical equality for my own medicine, because again, those first-line medicines don't work for me.
They don't.
And as the process of me doing a therapeutic use exemption, I'm forced to exhaust all of the medical options because of this backward approach. Where in medicine, if you and your doctor decide that medical cannabis works for you, that's what you use. Instead, I'm being told to take an SSRI or an antidepressant or
I
an
hate
opioid.
taking Advil, brother. I hate taking Advil.
Yes,
I don't even know what's in it.
So again, opioids, they hack a system. Cannabis uses the system in our cannabinoid receptors. We have about 85 cannabinoid receptors in our body, and the best thing away, whether it's with chiropractic care or in just the aspect of just understanding one's body, cannabinoid receptors are in every single exit of that body, and every time there's a crash, cannabis is one way that I use to release the inflammation that builds up there in regards to the the cannabinoid receptors that I have in my body, or whether it's working technical term. I always mess this up.
Which one?
High
So for you, it works,
neuropathic,
essentially.
What's the? I get hit in the head for a living.
Reflexes? No.
Yeah, no, not with acupuncture.
Oh, the neurofunctional?
Neurofunctioning acupuncture, right? So again,
There we go. We need the doctor.
So again,
We got
so
Dr.
going back
outside.
to it, I have a neurological disorder in regards to my upper extremities, but also throughout my body as well. But it's more prevalent in my upper body. And again, we have to constantly target it because, for instance, you guys are all familiar with the sense of hitting your funny bone.
Yeah,
well,
and
I get that everywhere on my body.
Wow.
And beyond that, I get radiated heat, where it'll also mask what my actual feeling is. So sometimes I'll elbow something, don't feel it, and I'll be on my phone, and I just realize my elbow's this big, and it's swollen again because my whole perception in my body and my nerve endings are all out of whack, and cannabis is the best way to target it because of the anti-inflammatory.
So for you, it works
component.
as a
And
pain
again,
management.
Back to the
Functional acupuncture.
functional acupuncture.
So this is where
it's my way to
Dr.
attack it.
Dario
Yeah.
comes into play. What's your opinion on this as a pain management tool? Cannabis.
I can't say much. I know there's evidence that demonstrates that it's good for concussion in the acute phase and for pain management. There's evidence that it shows that it's good for like multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's disease. So there is evidence that the cannabis oil does help with that.
Awesome.
And how much evidence would there be that opioids have a negative effect on your body? Can have it again, going back to the aspect as me as an athlete, the side effects are what are really getting me too.
Yeah.
Beyond that, for instance, if I got into too personal, one of the drugs I was told to take was Lyrica. I walk around about 215 pounds. It added 10 pounds of inflammation. I was upset stomach, and I get punched in the stomach a lot. So imagine being bloated, upset stomach,
kill,
you get
kill.
punched in the stomach.
Yeah.
You're on the ground with neon belly.
Yeah.
It's a taxing thing, and it actually puts me at a competitive disadvantage to my athletes. What I was trying to say in regards to the side effects of what the two has there's obvious in regards to in the possible. I'm not going to speak for you, but just in the aspect of the difference in the side effect between opioids and something like cannabis.
Right. There is definitely a difference, but again, I cannot really give a professional opinion on that because that is the medical doctors that have to do that for sure. I just go based on what the evidence shows, if it helps, does not help. And everybody reacts differently to opioids versus others, right?
Oh, 100%. But I mean more in regards to just the side effects and the capacity there too. Just if you want to look at the death count on the opioid crisis, what has higher death count?
A friend of mine,
Cannabis.
I agree.
Cannabis, you cannot
I think in 10 years' time,
physically.
our perception on cannabis in general will change. I think with more research and more studies being done every day, people will recognize that it is a useful tool for pain management and probably a more effective treatment than all the drugs that are out there today.
For sure. Well, and also the fact that, again, coming out of prohibition, it's no longer in the dark. Now we can actually run the studies to allow it to actually show itself. Soon there'll be And it's, again, my belief that soon it will be shown that overwhelmingly a better option.
Yeah.
But again,
But they don't want us to
now
have
we're
it.
allowed to, now Canada more specifically is now able to be at the forefront in regards to testing it both, and more importantly, looking at it both as a product and a legal product that is no longer going to put anyone to jail
Yeah.
for it, or you know, again, it was much harder. I don't know about any of you, but as a child to actually get, it was harder to get alcohol than it was cannabis. Because
Yeah.
again, of a
Yeah.
regulated market.
Unless you were Italian, and my dad used to give me wine by the
For sure. But I mean the beer store.
I had wine
again,
everywhere.
options,
The formaggio,
varieties
la
of spice of life.
sopressata,
But what I'm
nice,
saying is,
cantina.
if it, what the purpose should be is getting it in some ways out of the black market,
Right.
Because then
I
we
agree.
can actually talk about it about what
it's
it
legitimate.
should be. In my opinion, even with recreational cannabis, I still suggest a lot of people to seek
try it
medical
out.
advice, because I think there are some people that try to self-medicate no matter what it is, whether
Exactly.
it's coffee, whether it's a cigarette, whether it's
Alcohol.
cannabis, whether it's alcohol. I think it's best to always talk to a medical professional,
That's
and
it.
that's what I do as a patient and as an
That's a
athlete.
smart way of doing it. Like, my opinion on the opioids, I don't agree with it. I think they're trying to set up people to get addicted, to do population control, because they don't want us to be smart and thinking. I lost a friend at 30 years old because he was addicted to opioids. At 30 years old, how do you lose your life like that? What do you have to be so upset about? You know what I'm saying? But what killed him was he used to do so much oxys, and on top of that, he had alcoholism. You know, he had a drinking problem. The body shut down. He went into St. Joe's Hospital. They said the opioids with the alcohol done. They get people highly addicted. I'll tell you, for me,
It's
I
an epidemic,
practice.
obviously. It's an epidemic, and I hope we go the route of better treatments with less side effects. That's what we're really
Definitely.
looking for.
Well, and more importantly, out of the darkness and into the light.
Absolutely.
That's it. Yeah,
Agreed.
I definitely agree.
Elias,
with
where
that.
do you see yourself in 5 years' time? Are you still in the UFC in 5 years?
I'm definitely still fighting. I'm 30 years old. The game plan is at least 35. I've been in the UFC for 5 years, and I'm looking for, like I said, at least 5 more. But I'm only taking it, for the most part, one fight at a time. And
That's
right
the way
now,
to
I
do
have
it.
a very tough opponent, Derek Brunson, who's going to try and knock off my block, but I'm going to show him the difference between chest and checkers.
What's
it.
your prediction for the fight, May 4th? Are you taking him down on the ground? Are you knocking him out? Give me your prediction.
All of the above. I think in many
That's the
ways,
way to think.
I'm going to pick
Every
him up,
way
I'm going
possible.
to kick him, I'm going to punch him, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to be a mixed martial artist. And I think my pace as an athlete will be too much for him. I don't necessarily know how to make predictions in regards to it, but I think I'm overall a better athlete and will win by being dominant as an athlete.
Absolutely. And my prediction is on May 4th, you're going to see Elias win that fight. He's a
win.
former champion. He was on the show The Ultimate Fighter. He beat the Australians, and he's going to beat this wrestler on May 4th. Watch it on TSN. He's a Canadian boy of Greek descent. Let's support him, people. Watch it on May 4th. Let's get pumped up for this Canadian. I know he's going to do it. Thanks, man, for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Dario, thank you very much.
God
Marco
bless
G,
you.
thank you.
brother.
Thanks for joining us on Tono's Everything, the podcast.
Thanks, bro.
Catch us on Instagram at GTA Sportsbooks and at YouTube, Tono's Everything. Catch Elias. Elias, what's your Instagram handle?
Instagram and Twitter, very easy, at Elias Theodorou. Apologize in advance for all the vowels.
Dr. Dario, where do we catch you on Instagram?
Dr. Dario Mirian, and that's it.
Awesome. And the real Marco G, guys. Thanks a lot, guys. Watch next week.
God bless.
It's all about the game and how you play it. All about control, and if you can take it. All about your debt, and if you can pay it. It's all about pay. And who's gonna make it?